Shalom to all our viewers from Jerusalem. This is another edition of Middle East Review of TV7. And here with me this time is General Retired Amnon Sofrin, a senior Mossad director, was a division head, and many, many other things. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So Amnon, as you know, we are having a tumultuous time here in the Middle East, and as in every program that we have had in the last year, I would say, first we should discuss the ongoing on the ground and what we've seen in the last few days, then escalation in the north. I would say that there were a few tactical achievements for Israel, whether Israel did it or not. But the penetration to the Hezbollah communication, command and control system, I think should be devastating for them. But of course, also the killing of their most senior commanders of the Radwan in Eilat in a very pinpointed Israeli attack. But still, we see that Hezbollah is not, I would say, down and flat, and it's still acting. Where do you see it's going?
First of all, I believe that Hezbollah was badly damaged during this last week. Even embarrassment, frustration, whatever, due to the fact that all these communication devices exploded and caused many damaged people, being hurt, being killed. And the fact that Israel succeeded in, of course, they applied to Israel, but Israel, as if they succeeded in penetrating to their, what we call, secret pockets, and to cause this kind of damage is a great shock. Then add to that the fact that Ibrahim Akil, the senior commander of the, what we call, military wing of Hezbollah,
who just replaced another senior one, Shukri, which was also taken down.
He joined him gladfully. And the fact that Nasrallah now remains with only a few people that have what we call military skills and military experience. And they appointed 2 people to replace Ibrahim Akil and to nominate somebody else to be the head of Radwan forces. And that means that now he has less people to consult with on the military side. And if I look at the broad picture, they don't want escalation. They don't want to go into a wide war with Israel. And I believe that Israel, on the other hand, doesn't want to go into a wider war with Hezbollah. So we have some kind of a mutual deterrence between those two sides. And each one is keeping his own, what we call, equation. The fact that Hezbollah launched rockets yesterday, trying to hit Ramat David airport and other places in the northern part of Israel, but didn't go further than that, and didn't try to hit what we call residents per se, means that they are deterred or they don't want to go into a wider escalation and to drag Israel into Lebanon.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it seems to me that Israel's objective is very clear, actually to decouple or to disconnect the southern front from the north. Mm-hmm. And Hezbollah, I'm not sure in hindsight they would have joined Hamas on the 8th of October, a day after the massacre of the 7th. Hezbollah joined. I don't think that they did it probably they did it very reluctantly, because it's not a good time for them. They were not consulted even by Hamas. So they're not calling the shots right now, but they had to show solidarity. Maybe even they get their cues from Tehran. But this was an attrition war in the last 11 months. It seems like Israel now is trying to turn the table and to move into another stage and to actually put the Hezbollah on the horns of the dilemma, whether they should continue or stop. And this is why Israel is actually stepping up and giving them, really dealing them major blows. The question is now whether Hezbollah is their own boss. Will they make their own decision whether to continue or not, and in what kind of intensity? Or do you think the decision may be going into Tehran? Iran certainly does not want to lose their trump card in the region, which is Hezbollah. They've already lost Hamas as a military fighting unit, which is good, although not everything is cleared up yet in Gaza, but it's going towards that a military, I would say, decisive resolution over there. Politically, we have to still think about what we do in Gaza, but we can discuss it later. But for Hezbollah now, or Tehran, they have to think very, very hard and long, what are they going to do? It is true, there's a mutual deterrence, Amnon, as you said, because in a war with Hezbollah, a full-scale war with Hezbollah, we are also going to get hit by their long and more accurate missiles. But of course, we will suffer, but there is no doubt what will be the end result with the devastation to Lebanon and possibly Hezbollah being actually erased as a military power. So there is a big dilemma, both in Tehran and Nasrallah's Dahya. What do you think is their calculation, and can we make a prediction? Where is it going? What will they decide?
Okay, let me look at it a little bit broader, for a broader picture. Nasrallah gave a speech on Thursday, before Ibrahim Akil was assassinated. And he continued to speak about the linkage between the Northern Front and Gaza. And he kept on saying that as long as you are fighting in Gaza, we are going to fight on the Northern Front. I think that this didn't change so far. Now, of course, Tehran has leverage on Nasrallah, and they can say, hold your fire right now, don't stop fighting, but don't go into a wider escalation, because we don't want to lose your capacity that we built only to engage Israel in time when it needed, and not for the sake of these Sunnis in Gaza that are not worth it, okay? And Tehran can decide to what we call to control the height of the flames of Hezbollah. I don't think that Hezbollah is going to give up. I don't think that Hezbollah is going to stop fighting because it is too deeply engaged. It's going to lose face totally if it's going to stop fire because of our pressure. And is going to be what we call kind of a clown in the eyes of all the Middle East. And they can't afford it. So they'll keep on fighting by their own terms, try not to escalate, try not to go too far in order not to give us the excuse to get into Lebanon and to eliminate its capabilities. But I think that this is the equation right now, and everybody is playing accordingly. We're, of course, escalating our attacks and trying to hit as much as its infrastructure as we can. And we succeed so far in doing that. But we didn't touch what we call the long-range missiles and the precise weapon systems that he has, which are kept far away and will be dragged when time needed, if and when time comes.
Yeah, and this is an interesting point, actually. So I guess the calculations of Iran and Hezbollah are quite obvious. Hezbollah doesn't want to lose face. They have to continue. They cannot stop because of Israeli pressure, because this, as you say, they will be a laughingstock at the entire Arab world, and they will lose, actually, everything that they have gained so far. Even in Lebanon itself, they will lose ground politically. So that, if they continue, as you predict, and I guess this is a very fair assumption, that puts the question back into Israel. And we have to remember, Israel now, 60 or 70,000 of our residents in the north are refugees in their own country. Mm-hmm. Schools cannot start normally, and the children have to go for some other substitutes. This is not a sustainable situation. I guess if anyone would have said 11 months ago that during this time our people in the north will not come back to their homes, I think nobody would have believed. So that puts the big pressure on the Israeli government to do something decisive that can bring back the residents to the north, to the border towns, but they cannot do it as long as Hezbollah is on the border. And if we cannot bring about Hezbollah to pull back, let's say, north of the Litani, so they are not within range of the direct anti-tank missiles, Israel cannot achieve its goals. So the question is Israel prepared for a ground operation? Because this would be the only way to push Hezbollah back if they don't do it voluntarily. And here comes another calculation for Israel, and this is the United States of America. Of course, the U.S., for their strategic, purposes and interests, they do not want a larger war. If you add to this the political pressure, just, I would say, a month or so, 6 weeks before elections, that means there is a big pressure by the United States on Israel not to escalate. So you see there's a lot of moving parts in Beirut, in Tehran, in Jerusalem, and in Washington. On the one hand, the Americans say, don't escalate, we don't want a larger war. On the other hand, they say, but of course, if you are attacked and there is a full-scale war, of course, we will come to your aid. And to put, I would say, their money where their mouth is, they're sending back a second strike group of, another aircraft carrier. So we are now almost in a limbo, which is waiting to explode.
Right.
The question is it going to explode into a full-scale war? As you said, Hezbollah probably voluntarily will not go, but maybe there is a chance for some kind of a political solution in order to save face for Hezbollah. Let's say Israel will agree to do some minimal corrections on the border, as they demand all the time. Concessions on the border. And for that, Hezbollah is pulling back, actually, according to what they are committed to do, according to United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, which they never fulfilled, of course.
Right.
Is this something feasible? Is this something that would be good for Israel to do? And could it be in the cards?
I believe that, without knowing, of course, my belief is that that's what Israel is aiming for. To get to some political solution that will force Hezbollah to draw back north to the Litani River. Accordingly, of course, some concessions along the border as Hezbollah demanded. There are 13 points of disagreement. They claim, of course, that this is a Lebanese territory, and we claim that this is Israeli territory. But nevertheless, it can be settled down, at least part of them. But I don't think that Israel does want to go to a larger war in Lebanon, and for 2 or 3 main reasons. The first one is Israel armed forces are what we call up to the edge. We have units operating in Gaza, and they are going to stay in Gaza because we need to maintain the activity there to destroy any attempt of Hamas to rise up. The second one is Judean Samaria, where we have a lot of units deployed in order to engage all the terrorist groups that are operating there. And we have Lebanese territory. Now, to get into Lebanon, I had a discussion with Moshe Davidovich, is one of the seniors, in the northern part of Israel. And he said that I believe that we need to go and get up to the Litani River. And I said, okay, what comes next? It's not getting to the Litani River and pulling back. You have to stay there for years to begin engaging each one of the villages and each one of the small towns in southern Lebanon, and to clear up all the weapon systems and all the missiles and everything else. It will take years. That means we are going to go back to 2000 or before 2000, between 1985 and 2000 to the security zone. Do we want to go back there? We can't afford ourselves to do that. We don't have the ability not militarily, not politically, and not economical.
And it certainly will not ensure that they will not be
Of course not.
firing missiles over
Of course,
the security
of
zone.
course, of course. The rockets doesn't have any limits. It doesn't understand what is the borderline between Israel and Lebanon. And therefore, I believe that our aim is to try to force Hezbollah to go into a political arrangement that will enable him to save face, meaning to draw back, but with some concessions that will say to the whole Arab world, look, we got an achievement, and we stopped the fighting in the northern border. And I believe that the American administration wants it as well. They don't want into a great escalation on Lebanon right now before the final stage of the elections to presidency, which is due on November 5th. And they are engaged only or focused only with that, and they don't want now something to be in the middle and to interrupt this harmony that is going on in the United States. They don't have now any attention to anything else, but only to the elections.
So this is very interesting, Amnon, because this puts the ball in the court of the Americans. And we know that they are very much engaged in the negotiations between Israel, of course, not directly, and Hezbollah, government of Lebanon. The French are trying to help, but I don't think that they're doing anything which is worthwhile mentioning. If anything, it's counterproductive because they're giving the wrong messages to the Hezbollah. But we know Amos Hochstein, which is the presidential envoy, and he's doing the negotiations, he's shuttling between Jerusalem and Beirut and, of course, Washington. So the question is, what leverage do they have? I mean, they do have a leverage on Israel, of course. You know, they are the ones who are giving us the political cover in the United Nations, of course, all the munitions and spare parts and everything that goes with it. The military force here in the region, of course, both in the Mediterranean and in the Arab Gulf, is there, of course, for deterrence and for defending Israel. Hezbollah, I don't know, do they have much leverage over the Hezbollah? It seems like they are, by saying out loud that they do not want a larger war, and they put the pressure on Israel, that means that they lose a leverage against Hezbollah. Maybe they should do, at least in private talks, if Amos Hochstein came to Beirut saying, listen, on the one hand, we have the carrot, which is a political settlement, and you will get a few minor corrections, but you'll have to pull back, 1701, you'll have to comply with it completely. But if you don't, we are going to allow, quote unquote, Israel to go full force, and that could be a devastating blow to Lebanon and to Hezbollah. Are the Americans capable of doing that and playing a tough ball game? Because this is the only way you can achieve anything, unfortunately. And I say it unfortunately because, you know, we both know very well the American system. Unfortunately, we have seen the American efforts not very successful, not vis-a-vis Hamas and not vis-a-vis Hezbollah. Are they capable of putting the pressure on all sides, especially Iran and Hezbollah, to bring about a political settlement in the north?
First of all, I believe that the fact that they send another striker group into the Middle East and to deploy it on the Mediterranean Sea is a message to Hezbollah and to Iran. Don't. It's kind of don't in another meaning, of course. That means don't attack Israel, don't go too far. The fact that Iran didn't respond so far on the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran means a lot. That means that Tehran considers one more time, again and again, whether it's worth getting into a clash with the Americans or not, or to kind of lose face because it was done in Tehran under the protection. But nevertheless, they don't react so far. They just claim that they are going to react somehow and when the time comes and so on and so on and so on, but nothing happened. Same goes with Hezbollah. Hezbollah claimed that he's going to attack Israel back because of the assassination of Fuad Shukur. And they tried, and they got hit. And then Nasrallah began lying and telling tales that he succeeded in hitting Glilot, which never happened. So they were in a bad shape, both of them. And the Americans are deterring them. Now Americans can, the American administration can take a leverage on Hezbollah as well. The question is, are they going to do it or not? I'm not sure.
And that could be partly because of some political considerations.
Right.
Political considerations just before the elections, maybe they cannot put too much pressure on Israel because the administration, or let's say Kamala Harris, the Democrats, do not want to lose the Jewish votes and Jewish, let's say, peripheral influence. On the other hand, if they have a full-out war and putting a lot of, let's say, pressure on the Muslim world, they may lose the Muslims, especially in Michigan, which is a very sensitive, a very important state. And I think all political pundits say that without Michigan, if the Kamala Harris doesn't win Michigan, she cannot get a path to the White House. So in a way, they are in a bind. So in that case, do you see that next 2 or months until elections going the same way we have been until now, which means punches between Hezbollah and Israel without a decisive result?
I believe that that's what we're going to see unless somebody makes a mistake. That means that, for example, if Israel is going to cause collateral damage, which is unbearable, Hezbollah will have to react forcefully and try to hit even further than it did so far. On the other hand, if Hezbollah is going to escalate and to hit some residents in Israel, we are going to escalate the attacks on the other side. But, it is so sensitive right now that you can't really predict what is going to happen tomorrow.
Absolutely. And if you add to that, that there may be other considerations, especially in Tehran. The new president, Pezeshkian, is someone who is supposedly not very extreme when it comes to, not when it comes to the United States and Israel or the region or supporting all the terrorists, but at least in internal politics of Tehran. Lately, he agreed to not to enforce the hijab, so the women of Iran do not have to cover their heads. He really is very concerned with the economy, which is in shambles. They are on the verge of collapse. Mm-hmm. So I guess he's a moderating force when it comes to escalation in the region. If you add to that other Muslim countries, Jordan, for instance, they have a new prime minister, which is an economist. So all of them have internal problems that they have to deal with.
Right.
So this may be a moderating force, but I think, Amnon, that everybody is waiting for the big guy to come. That means nobody will give concessions now to a president which is a lame duck.
Right.
And certainly we know that Biden is not going to be there.
Right.
And it has always been the game here in the region. You wait to the new president, which will be there for at least 4 years, then you give the, let's say, the concession to him in order to get some favors. So that means that we may still have to have this limbo, both in the north, but what about the south with Hamas? Unfortunately, we have not gotten all our hostages back, which is gut-wrenching. Really, it's heartbreaking. And we don't know which way it will go, since the Americans also do not have the leverage now, not vis-a-vis Israel, but not also vis-a-vis the other moderating forces, right. Negotiating parts, whether it's Qatar or Egypt. So over there, it also seems to be hanging on a line. But there the situation is a little bit different, because I think Israel's presence there is quite solid. And now Israel has to think, what do we do next? And it seems to me that many say that in order to really deal Hamas The last blow is to bring somebody else, a Palestinian, to govern Gaza.
Right. Let me refer to 2 points. The first one is what is the future of Gaza? The fact that Hamas is still controlling Gaza on the civilian side, and they control all the convoy aids that are getting in, and they decide who gets what, and they take a great part for themselves and they sell it with a high price to the people that don't have really money for that. That means that Hamas is controlling Gaza for at least the next future. The Israeli government didn't decide so far what is going to be the future of Gaza, who is going to control Gaza. They say who won't control, but they don't say who will, okay? And the debate within the government, especially the right-wing ministers, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, they don't really want anyone to control Gaza, but the IDF and the Minister of Defense and the Chief of General Staff reject that. They don't really want to control Gaza with what we call military governance. That means that as long as we don't have any other solution, Hamas will still valid in Gaza, and we don't have another option to destroy him totally. We caused the great damage to his military capabilities, but not to what we call the civilian control. And he's still controlling Gaza.
Yeah.
Due to that, they have the cards of what we call 101 hostages, and they still control it, and they still play with that, and we don't have any solution for that.
Yes. Thank you, Amnon. We have not discussed all the issues. There are too many for this short time, but I want to thank you. I want to thank all our viewers around the world for watching this edition of Middle East Review from TV7 in Jerusalem.